Glad to see so many people here. First, though, do I have an emergency exit? The reason I asked that question is, in all seriousness, this is not a happy talk. That's why you're here.
Ship the messenger.
May I point out that I'm giving this talk in a world, or in a set of countries that don't believe in freedom of that particular sort, and I doubt any of you are well enough armed to take me out before I take you out. In all seriousness, though, my intention is not to make you people happy. We have an unhappy situation in the free and open source communities, and that is, simply put, your software sucks. Big time. They like this. In San Francisco, I could get paid for saying things like that to people in private, or in whipping them. Let's talk about the problem a little bit. You can turn this, turn the projector off. No, turn it off. I've got no slides, and I don't need the light in my eyes. There's a button right there to turn it off. All right, let's explain. I'm Hugh Daniel. I manage what's called the Linux FreeSWAN project. I'm about 3 weeks away from having been using computers at all, in any way, shape, or form, for 25 years. Yes, I started when I was 14, like many of us here. This is a good thing. I've gone through just about every imaginable operating system and hardware combination that was smaller than a refrigerator. And yes, I still hate primes. I do a lot of different stuff. I've worked in a lot of different fields in my time working with computers. I have done telecommunication systems. I did hypertext back when it was uncool to say you wanted to read documents on computers. I've worked with crypto systems, financial systems, and now I manage something called the Linux FreeSWAN project. A few years ago, in the Linux FreeSWAN project, I started working on the project simply as a tester because I'm phenomenally good at breaking things. Software, relationships, hopefully government's dreams, all sorts of stuff. And that was kind of okay when I started the project because there wasn't much happening with the project. Literally at one point I spent 2 weeks scraping a concrete floor in my house with a razor blade so it would be flat, right? I just didn't have that much to do. And it turned out it wasn't a problem because I had all this time, software quality didn't matter to me because I wasn't busy seriously trying to get incredibly important work done because there was nothing for me to test. I didn't mind the fact that x386 is a disaster as far as management, let alone usage. I didn't mind the fact that if I wanted to make TCP dump compile, I had to spend 30 minutes or an hour at it because it was either that or literally scraping the floor with the razor blade so it would be flatter when we put the new floor on it. It wasn't a problem. I'm no longer that flush with leftover time. I literally probably won't see my own home, my own bed, my housemate, my nice comfy chairs till October. I'm on the road that much now. And I'm doing this every year. I'm running around playing Johnny Crypto Seed. I'm really trying to kick the FreeSWAN project into high gear, get opportunistic encryption to you folks. I'm what's called busy. And I'm also managing about 20 Unix machines worldwide, not the least of which is my favorite one sitting in front of me. And I'm trying to do a lot. I'm trying to do a lot of different things. I'm trying to do slide presentations. I'm trying to manage a team of people. What it takes to learn to be one of these. But no, I'm trying to learn, right? Because it's illegal. It is illegal for me to write the code that we all need to preserve our freedoms. So I'm hiring people outside the US, one of which is here, Richard Briggs, who's been our kernel hacker all this time. But, I have to learn to work. I have to learn to make him work, right? He's a cat. and I'm herding cats. And being a cat is different than being a cat herder, and that takes time, right? So I need management tools, right? I need these web tools that keep track of tasks and all this sort of stuff. Every time I go and try to grab one of these tools, it doesn't work. We're producing crap and shit. And what happens is I play with these tools and then I give up in frustration and I go and I use Emacs with ASCII text files. Because so far, Emacs hasn't let me down. Although I thought I just lost a file, the outline for this talk, which of course I'm not following in any way, shape, or form at the moment. We all have goals here. And the reason we're here is we're trying to build a new community. If you look at the last 3,000 years of history, since it looks like the Dravidians in, India, first started building towns, we've been learning how to build towns, okay? Learn lessons the Incas didn't learn. Don't piss upstream, okay? Build sewers, okay? Don't go around slaughtering each other. Preserve some freedoms for everyone so that you can do the weird things you want to. These are important lessons. It's taken us thousands of years to learn. Some of us feel that we're trying to do the same thing in the internet community, in the online community, in this new place we've invented. And we're trying to do it really, really fast. The advantage is that unlike 3,000 years ago, we don't spend half our time killing each other and the other half of our time scraping together food. We don't spend, we've got lots of people to work with and share, and we've got this amazing thing, the internet, that's a mind accelerant. We're speeding up how minds work, all right? We're trying to make this better. The reason we're here and not all nice and dressed up in at least polo shirts, if not suits, at some Microsoft exhibition, is that we want to get at the foundations and build them solid and share them among all of us and to make certain they're open and well-built and everyone understands what they are. And they're the best we can possibly build for ourselves and each other. That's a really noble goal. You might not have thought about it that way before today, but that's really what we're doing. Okay, that's part of what hacking is. Hacking is working intensely to build something. It might do the job in a beautiful way, if you're lucky, or it might do something in a really ugly way. If you're lucky, both work. That's the goal of hacking. The problem is that we've been developing a new culture. If you look at the hacker cultures that are traditional, the ones that started long before me and in places I wasn't allowed to go near on the east and west coast when I was a little kid, these were cultures of very few people. Now, in the Midwest of the United States, where I grew up, we developed our own culture, and it was a traditional hackers culture. Everywhere there have been effective hackers, we've grown up these traditional cultures of working together, of learning from each other, cultures that aren't based on gangs or aren't based on hierarchies. When I started in the Ann Arbor Computer Freaks, I knew nothing, by definition. Right? I forced my way into my first computer course by learning how to toggle in bootstrap loaders. That got me into the computer course I was banned from because I didn't pass Algebra 1. We share stuff. We learn from each other. We do a better and better job. We now have an interesting situation, and it's a classic situation of how do you take the values and beliefs of a small group of people and inflate them to a very large group of people. You're that large group of people. Many of you haven't spent hundreds of hours working away at machines smaller than most wristwatches in computational power in this room. Many of you have never seen the problems that were solved by Unix 20 years before you were born, possibly. Many of you have not had to beat your head bloody against walls that modern languages have just made go away, well, except for buffer overflows. So you haven't learned many of the things that some of us have learned. And you haven't learned, and I haven't learned all the lessons that came before me. Does this matter? Well, I think it matters. That's why I'm up here talking to you and saying these crazy things. It matters because I'm very dedicated to making this machine that I live with, this half of my brain, an entirely open source platform, so I can go in and fix anything, so that I can go in and add features, right? But even I have already stated that half the time I'm giving up. I'm going and using an ASCII text file. All right? Most people I know, even professionals, even professors, even some of our leading lights in our community, have pulled me aside and said, Hugh, why are you bothering? Why bother using this open source shit? If you want to do a presentation, do it in PowerPoint. Just run it in VMware. All right? This seriously happened to me last night. If we want our software to grow, if we want our community to be healthy, it has to be a community that's lived in. If we are driving people away from our community, in the long run, our community will become a ghost town. If our software is hard to use, if it doesn't make sense, if we don't do a manual because that's someone else's job, if we don't fix the bugs because, well, it's open source, you should go fix the bugs. If we have an attitude problem, we will be alone in this ghost community. Now, it might not be absolutely alone, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring in the community of people who haven't found the wonder of machines, like everyone here, I think, has found. We're trying to bring them in and go, look at, these machines can't just be something, or should be something more than something you just bitch at. They should be inspiring. They should be useful, okay? You should be part of building this better world. If we don't do a better job, people are just going to go, I don't have time to play with this shit, and they're going to go run Microsoft. And they won't be helping us. I went and had a long talk with Eric Raymond on this subject about, I don't know, 6-8 months ago. Is this still coming through? I don't hear myself echoing. Okay. I had a long talk with Eric Raymond about this because I've been thinking about this for a while. For the last couple of years while I've been busy, the software problem's been bothering me. And I had a talk with Eric. And the reason I had a talk with Eric is because I want to take on the entire open source ethos. We seem to have an ethos. You can write a fragment of a program. You can write something that even exists already. Okay, you can do a different version that instead of standing on its head does cartwheels or something like this. And it's just the same. You can write it from scratch. You can do this whole parallel development. You can throw away all those boring options that the old Unix version had. You can get your names in light on fresh meat, and you can impress that girl or boy sitting next to you. Well, Eric and I talked about this because Eric is one of the main people behind this way of thinking. And what he was doing was he was trying to encourage you people to be here. And he's done a phenomenal job. There's standing room only in this room. I don't see a single, okay, there's one seat up there that's gone unused if someone's looking for a seat next to the cameraman. This is good. I no longer feel, though, it's good enough because we're not talking early adopters anymore. We're not talking people who have a lot of time. Some of you are a little bored. There's a pretend economic downturn at the moment. Believe me, this will change. There's plenty to do. And what I really want to say is there's plenty to do right. And what is right? Okay, well, at some point I have to stop pissing and moaning and start explaining a few things. Okay, right is caring, first of all. Right is doing an entire job from top to bottom. Right is realizing that there's several communities of people out there you're trying to reach. Now, obviously, the first community of people you're trying to reach is yourself. You've got to solve the problem you're dealing with right now. You've got to write a program that deals with the thing that's bothering you. Please do that. I hope that you're already doing that and that you continue to do that. What I'm trying to say is that there's more work to be done. I want to raise the bar. I don't want a program to show up on FreshMeat until it has a man page. I don't want a program to show up on FreshMeat until it's reached 1.0. I don't want to have to sit there and go through 20 or 30 steps to compile your program. I don't want to sit there trying to use Google to find the libraries you require because you're too lazy to link to them, let alone include them in the binary or in an FTP file for me to suck down. I don't want to bounce on using Magic Point because it doesn't have a single pointer to the fonts it uses anywhere. Neither does FreeType. I might have done slides for you guys today, right? Nice slides to make you all nice and happy and feel like you were doing something than listening to a lunatic rant about how upset he is about software, right? I started installing Magic Point last night. What did I have to do to install Magic Point? Well, I select down a tar file. Good first move, not bad, right? Then I typed /configure. Okay, that's standard these days. Then I had to type xmk mkf or something like this. Awful. Why can't the makefile do that? And then I have to type make files. Well, why can't the makefile do that? Then I have to type make. Great. Then I type make and test, or excuse me, make check, and it fails. It's got no integrity checks whatsoever. Well, that should boot it out of any software distribution that I want to run, period, right there. Then I bring the program up, and with the little demo, and that's nice. And you can click on the demo, and that's real sweet. And I go, cool, how do I use this thing? And I type make man. Excuse me, I type man, whatever the magic, NPT, whatever the command is. I type man NPT, and it says nothing appropriate. Now, at that point, I think that alone should make any software program not be included in any Linux distribution. Stallman is dead wrong. Info pages are not nearly good enough. Man pages communicate to you people, to sysadmins, to people who have a vague understanding of the problem space and need something pithy and detailed that solves the problem. Man pages are critical. Now, it turns out that Magic Point isn't completely in error. If I typed make space install .man, it actually installed a man page. Pretty good, but I had to go through these extra steps, right? There's more than enough things that we're going to have to add to the process of installing software for security purposes that me having to figure out how to get the man page installed is ridiculous. I highly suggest going and reading the GNU standards document. It's called standards.txt. It's part of the Emacs or info trees. Except for the man page stupidity, it's almost entirely right on. Okay, everything it says is in there. And everyone who releases even a script even if you're just writing a shell script that you never programmed in C, you don't think you need to know how to do this, should read that document. Because it talks about how to get software to people in a usable fashion. Right? And I'm not talking about Joe Average on the street yet. I'm talking about you guys in here. Because you guys are all getting busy, and you guys all need better software. There's a layer of help beyond man, and we're seeing that in applications. I have a full-time guy who writes tech documentation and end-user documentation for the Free Swarm project. He was approximately the second or third person I hired out of, I guess I've got 6 now. That's how important we feel documentation is, end-user, human-readable documentation. The horrible stuff that says, take your fist, close all but one finger, stick up nose, rotate, okay? Literally, I know this is frightening, but we're doing something new. To me, I've been doing computers for over 2 decades. There's almost no program you can show me here that I haven't seen some glimmering of before. Okay, that's not true for the people on the other side of the train track here, right? Even in this day and age of computers, these people have mostly not seen the sorts of systems we build. All they've seen is the garbage from Gates, and if they're lucky, a Macintosh, right? And those systems have all been boiled down to, if I may change the metaphor from click to point and shoot. What else do we need for quality here? We need an attitude change. I'm going to describe to you an incident that happened to me once again yesterday. I'm going to try to cloak the actual group of people here in some privacy, but I mentioned I ran a particular piece of software. And the group of people who I just helped get out of a real sticky wicket, and I will continue to help get out of a real sticky wicket in this particular case, this group of people looked at me and went, you know that? No! Well, there's a secret hole we won't tell you about in that, and you've got to run our stuff. And I looked at them and said, no way am I running your stuff. You folks have been unwilling or unable to deal with the standards process and make your stuff work with everything else out there. And they said, well, then all of your systems are going to be owned. And as one, after the leader said that, he walked away and everyone walked away from me. I have not been in a gang situation like that since about, 7th grade. It does not engender these people to me. Gangs and hierarchies are not what the free and open source movements are about. And this attitude is not going to help. The Free Swan team, as the manager of the Free Swan team, we put on one hell of an attitude. All right, we kicked one Des off the net, except for idiots. All right, and I will say that bluntly. And I will say, look, if you don't do the job right, you're an idiot. I will say that sort of thing. But I won't walk up to somebody and say, I know something you don't. You've got to use my software, and then walk to the other side of the playground. All right? Attitude is what we're talking about here. Let me explain to you why I'm in Unix. I knew every basic there was in 1980, top to bottom, left to right, in and out. The professor at the university said that one day he plopped a machine in front of me. He saw me type for 2 minutes and make a mistake. He heard me mumble, oh, they used that sort of basic as their basis. Okay, and I never made a mistake again. Obviously, he got bored with watching me because I'm certain the second he walked away, I made 5 more mistakes. All right? This is what I did. I knew CPM, I knew Exidy, I knew PET, I knew machines you've never heard of inside and out. I stumbled across a paper. This paper was written by some people at Berkeley, I believe it was at least. They were looking at implementing something called virtual memory for this little operating system I'd never heard of called Unix. They were looking at it and they said, well, before we go off and do all this work, this has been done several times before. Let's study what has been done before us, because someone might have made a mistake that I don't have to make again. Someone might have had a bright idea that I don't have to invent all on my own, that I can grab from them. To quote Isaac Newton, to stand on the shoulders of the greats that came before him. This impressed me. This got me for close to 2 decades out of the micro community. I ran gloriously happy into the community of Unix machines and Unix users. I wanted to be in a community of people that thought like that. And I feel I've profited from that. I've learned much. There's a lot I still need to learn, which is why I'm now looking at various things. I'm reading one of the XP books from a, oh gods forbid, a manager's point of view. Software-wise, I've seen every technique in there, right? But now I've got to think of it from a manager's point of view. And, my team doesn't even know this, but I'm probably going to hand them the books to read themselves. Oh, joy. And they get to read it from a programmer's point of view so that we'll have something to argue about because everyone have read the same book. What I'm trying to get at here is that we have another attitude problem like the gang problem I just mentioned, and that's a not invented here problem. That's a, hey, I dress in black, I wear leather, I'm the geek is now chic, I get to do it my way, and fuck you. Well, some of that's useful. Stallman's taught me, at least personally, that being a flaming asshole can sometimes get people motivated. But I've also learned, before you clap too much, I've also learned that can get a lot of people annoyed. And I'm certain there are people in these communities I've annoyed. My apologies for the annoyance, but not for making you think. Who's giggling? Giggle much more, I'll come over and tickle you. So we need to learn from others and what came before us. We need to be able to work together. I come from the BSD community. I never used Linux before I started working on the Free Swan project. I didn't use Linux for 2 reasons. One of them has nothing to do with Linux itself. It's I couldn't stand IBM Feces clones. And now I own one. I own like 15 or 20. Matter of fact, I've got 2 Suns left in operation. One I will junk as soon as I get home and have the time to, and the other is a friend's machine I keep running for the fun of it. And that's kind of a pity, because these things are still pieces of shit, as the Linux community has learned. Unfortunately, Linux itself has become a piece of shit. I was gloriously happy at the beginning of IETF to give up on 2 months of trying to use 2.4. I upgraded from 2.4.7 to 2.2.19, and my machine works a lot better. The joke I'm saying these days, if you want Linux to be solid, if you want it to work, what you'll do is you'll run yesterday's application on last week's library, on last year's kernel, on decade-old hardware. It's what works, right?
Why not run an integrated operating system instead?
Excuse me?
Why not run an integrated operating system instead of not just a mix of stuff here and there?
Because I want to run an operating system that I can fix, even in a crunch. You know, you have to understand, I'm not intending to live on this ball of rock forever, right? I'm going to move into space. We're going to move into the asteroid belt. Hopefully we'll move into the asteroid belt at peace with the governments and not at the wars they're trying to create, but that's the future we have to worry about. And let me explain this, okay? I will review every line of code that makes my spaceship work, and none of your code's going in there. Right? I intend to live, not die because my fucking ship hit a rocket, you know, a tenth the speed of light. The attitude thing is what I'm trying to get at here. The attitude, you know, I've been collecting for a year examples of bad error messages, of misdesigned programs. What I'm trying to get at here is there's an attitude. Right? It's the attitude of discovery and learning. It's the attitude of understanding there's a time for innovation, there's a time for science, and there's a time for engineering. All three of these things, innovation, inspiration, pure just wild speculation, versus scientific discovery, how do things work, right? Versus the difference between all these idiot computer science schools and the fact that we have almost no computer engineering schools of, okay, I take the inspiration, I take the science, how do I make something that doesn't kill people? This matters to me. Free Swan, my project, is in use at Greenpeace, apparently. I just found this out. Cool, okay? It's also in use by apparently various branches of the U.S. military, right? Both of these groups are going to have people under fire. Hopefully not from each other, but who knows, right? And our software has to work. It has to not kill people, right? You might think that you're just writing a sort algorithm, but if you put it out into the free source community, that sort algorithm could end up sorting which planes get to take off when without hitting each other, all right? I would love that. I would love to be able to audit the software that the U.S. government is scared to death that I might know where a plane is in the skies over the U.S. Right? I'd love to have that be open source. I'd love to lower the cost of that because you and I all pay that cost. Every time we fly, it's more expensive because that software is custom written. Right? And it's custom written because we're not doing a quality job. Right? So part of the quality job here is an attitude of understanding when the three, inspiration, science, and engineering, are appropriate, and using them. And using them with a will, right? A lot of people are sitting here real quiet, and I can hear the thoughts going, well, I want to have fun. I'm trying to say that there is fun in this. People who built up much of the scientific and engineering base of today were amateurs. An amateur is someone who isn't worse, but was often better than the professionals. Most of the great scientists were amateurs, people who at the time were rare because they had the luxury to waste time and do this weird science stuff, but today, even those of us who are working 9-to-5 jobs, or 8 to 5, whatever the numbers are, we have more luxury time than people like Faraday did. Right? We can do a spectacularly better job. Let me talk about better. Have I got all the things I want out? You know, what time is it? How much longer do I have? Stage manager. And I get to talk till? 4. Okay. Okay, so we got 20 minutes. Let me go through my set of solutions here, because what I've been trying to do is I've been yelling at you. I've been trying to pound it into your heads that you can do better, you can have a lot of fun at it, and you can impress the world. All right? I expect that we've reached a plateau in open source as far as its interestingness to the world. I was literally told last night, don't tell these people how to write applications. This community can only write, toys and operating systems. Well, Linux pisses me off enough that I could just call it a toy operating system and be done. Let me go through a set of solutions I wrote up. Know your target customer and community. When you're writing a piece of software, even if it's for yourself, it would help to know yourself. It would help to be able to think about the last time you used a new piece of software and you didn't understand what it was, right? And what did you do to figure it out? Were you able to bring up a man page? Well, maybe the guy you give this software to next needs a man page, right? So know yourself, know how you use things, and remember that you're trying to do something good enough to make you happy when you use it. An example of this is I developed a style and theory of how to write error messages. Let's be frank here. No one in this room, unless they used one particular piece of software I wrote a decade ago, has ever seen an error message, any error message, that was useful to anyone but the programmer for the half hour after they wrote and debugged that code. Okay, which ones? I heard bullshit. Stand up, please. I'm not afraid. Come on. Tell me which program.
Did you ever use KDE and wrote a file and said, I can't write this file? Or
Okay, I can't write this file. All right.
I didn't use the program this morning.
Okay, hold on. Okay. Does it go through the directory tree and tell you where it loses permissions?
Yes.
Well, you just said I can't write this file. You didn't tell me that I can't write this file because I'm blocked at this point from having write permission, or read permission, or execute permission. Disk full, okay?
Not enough permissions to write this file.
Not enough that's not good enough. Good example. No, good. No. Good example. You got me partly. Okay, but I can still pull my ass out of the fire on this one. Okay? I've not used this, all right? I am philosophically inclined to think GNOME. I'm actually using the GNOME environment, okay? I am not impressed, despite my philosophy, with the GNOME applications. KDE is what I'm giving my family on the machines I'm building for them. KDE is a step in the right direction. It's not far enough. All right, but I am very impressed, even though I disagree technologically with how they do things, with the actual applications. And his application was at least trying to do things. I wrote a piece of software, or I rewrote a piece of software called News. In News, it was a PostScript-based Windows system. Don't worry, it's nullified, I lost.
Spell it.
What?
Spell it. How many G's?
NEWS. It was the PostScript-based Windows system from Sun and James Gosling. It was the thrice grandfather of that bastard thing called Java. Anyway, look, I was trying to tell a short story here. I wrote error messages. Error messages have to have 4 lines, 4 separate lines minimum in them. Real quickly, there are timestamp, machine stamp, blah, blah, blah. The next line is what I can't do, right? The error message needs to say, I cannot write the file you asked me to write. Right? It needs to talk to the user saying what's up. The next error, the third line in the error message is a very incredibly detailed line. It is so detailed, you've had to write maybe more code than the actual work took to figure out what went wrong. It is the code that walks the tree and says, I needed write permission on this directory to do what you asked me to. And the fourth line is the suggested fix. You know, if you want to fix this, get permissions and change permissions on this directory.
Now, this would typically be an error message that somebody who writes software can read. But if you say, okay, I'm building an end-user application, and I use some library that produces this kind of error message, and somebody tries to create a new slide in his presentation and says, I have some write thing down there wrong, Well, I'm just trying to create,
Okay.
so you have different levels of error.
You have different levels. And guess what sucks? Programming languages. Every programming language, except a few of you who've used Lisp for Smalltalk, is designed to deal with the machine, with one accumulator. Look at C. It's got one accumulator that passes up and down. We need an entire parallel control structure for dealing with errors and operations, separate from values being passed up and down. Okay, we can do this, there are languages that do this. Most programmers don't write enough error code to solve the problem. And specifically what I'm trying to do with making the programmer write those two last lines is to think so much about the problem that they maybe can avoid it entirely. Right? For what you asked, the programmer is just trying to do this. There's an error message down below. Error messages should not be emitted by bottom level code. Right? Error messages need to be passed up. They need to be fleshed out. The exact reason why needs to happen, needs to be figured out down there. And this whole 4 lines needs to be passed up to a piece of code bright enough to decide, I'm not going to bother the user with that. I can fix it. Or I'm not going to bother with the user with that because it doesn't matter. Okay? Or, oh, fuck. I do want to get through the list of other things quickly, so try to keep these two short, you and then you.
I think it's not every time possible to make good error messages because it's not always possible to find every reason for an error. For example,
How many?
I could not write a file that can mean physical attributes, that can mean special extended to file system attributes, it can mean R file system attributes that make it impossible to write a message.
Okay.
It's too much.
Oh, stop. What do you do for a living? Okay? I don't know about you. I don't work on a single piece of software anymore less complex than a 747. You've listed 4 things. How long would it take you to write the code to test those 4 things? And report to the user which one went bad?
I don't know, not very well.
Well, okay.
But there are a lot of
That's my point. Not very long. Spend it.
because I know that these problems may exist, but there are a lot of people who can't know every possible source of a...
No. This is computers.
I think there are thousands more problems than people that I can't...
Sir, I'm going to disagree with you. You listed 4 things. That's it. It's 4 things to test for. It's not that hard. One of them might have to be a loop. Well, actually, 3 of them might have to be a loop, searching for which directory or file that particular type of permission or access is failed on, but it's not 2 hours of programming, right? Let's explain something. Let me give you an example here of why this matters. I'm not dumb. I'm not the world's brightest guy, but I'm not dumb, okay? I ran into a problem where I had a piece of hardware that had DHCP, right? And it failed. DHCP failed. I got this error message that told me the world had ended, and the crustal plates had turned upside down, and all my data on my sister's machine had been RM'd. Okay? I looked at it and said, oh my God, I found a bug in a critical piece of community software. Right? I then immediately whipped out Ethereal and TCP dump, and I went to the bottom of the stack, and I worked my butt off. Right? And I wrote 4 entire bug messages. I posted one of them, big, serious, right? And I'm posting this through, and I go and I read the manuals, and oh God, they're awful, but I read them, and I read the man pages, and I did all this stuff. I lost 5 hours I didn't have that day because I saw a bug in the community. I dedicated that time to a bug report. Well, 4 or 5 bug reports. I got 1 off. I was working on the other 3, and I was double checking that I dotted everything, that I read all the documentation, because there are various flags and stuff. You know, the second time I grepped through the file, I found a different thing, a different flag. Matter of fact, in the end, I think I found 3 flags that were all documented to be on by default that were necessary for this old piece of boot P software to work correctly under DHCP. And just out of paranoia, I recompiled the entire universe, reconfigured things, started it all up again, forcing one of the 3 flags on. It still failed. I tried the next flag, tried the 3rd flag. Oh, all of a sudden everything worked. There was no bug at all, except if you count the fact that 3 documentation bugs, 3 pieces of documentation were all written wrong. The error messages indicated the world had ended when there was simply not a correct configuration. And most of all, the architect of the program didn't understand how to design things so that people don't run into these sorts of bugs. Yes, it's going to take you longer. Yes, it's going to take you more time to write the pieces of code that chase bugs up and down, or chase error conditions up and down and try to report them to the user. That's what I am demanding you and my people do. And they've heard this message from me, right? Time and time again. And I paid them to do this. I'm pointy-haired, but I'm also a little dumb. I pay my guys to do good work when I possibly can. I want to get into two more points, but you had your hand up. Okay, fine. You're welcome to corner me, right? You're not a bad person. I just disagree with you professionally. Right? And I think you need to work harder. And you need, yeah, you need to think about, enumerate it. I mean, I've done this. I've sat down just for giving talks like this and said, what are the possible errors that can be the result of one of the stupid error messages, invalid file access sorts of things in Unix, right? And actually, when I sat down and enumerated them, I saw about 20. But you write this code once in the open source community, and guess what? You can share it. You can reuse it. What?
That's the problem. Nobody is going to read.
Yeah, they all have to feel my foot in their butt. Rigorous testing is another thing. Any program that doesn't do make check should just be out of here. Okay, I'm so extreme about this, I'm pushing user mode Linux to be a standard part of Linux. Because I want people to grab FreeSWAN, and I want everyone who grabs FreeSWAN to type make check. It fires up two virtual user mode Linuxes, wires them together networking-wise, and runs the tests. I think that's important. And I'm going to pay someone to do that work. That's how important I think it is. Listening to people's problems. I described to you how I spent 5 hours working on a problem. Well, that was because I happen to know Ted Lemon. And even though Ted and I have had professional disagreements, we're old friends in some sense. We certainly sit down and chit-chat with each other. There's a lot of software projects out there I've given up on. There's a lot of bad attitude in our community. There's a lot of people I sent a bug to, and they go, well, that's not a bug, that's a feature. And the reason I said this is they don't understand something really fundamental that I want to kind of leave off with here, except for the last couple minutes of questions. How much time do I have? 10 minutes. Oh, that's plenty. Dance time! Come on, get it off. All right. There's something more about computers than probably most of you have been taught in these shitty computer science courses, and the non-existent computer engineering courses. There's a difference in systems between what I call mechanism and paradigm. And this is where the real wow of Unix comes from for me, is that Unix has a paradigm. What's the difference? How many people here have been told that BOS is the greatest thing since sliced cheese? It's object-oriented, it's message passing, it's really cool. We've all heard this, right? How many people use it? One! Okay? BOS has mechanism down cold. Its mechanism is better than Unix, period. It's boring. Why is it boring? Because in the end, BOS comes out no different than Mac OS or Windows. Windows is a single pile of steaming function calls. Mac OS is many small piles of steaming function calls. There's no way you use things. In Unix, we don't have much of a mechanism. We've got processes, and we've got files, and we kind of got pipes, and that's it for mechanism. Right, we've got sockets and function calls, system calls, but those are just steaming piles of calls. There's too many ioctls. Let's get rid of ioctls. That's something I'm going to work on. Yay, fewer ioctls. But Unix, 5 minutes, okay. Unix is something more than just the mechanism. It has a paradigm. It has the paradigm that says everything a process or a file can be treated as something you can just feed data into and feed data out of. They all have a property that's the same. More than that, we are terse. We have short commands. We don't spit out a lot of user help such that you can feed the output of this Perl process into this Python process, into this awk process, and we can build these wonderful tools. And the reason all of you Linux and BSD users are here is simply because this is a cool and powerful paradigm. It is beyond anything that has been designed before or since. And we need to go on and design better things. But I want you folks to start learning this sort of thing. There's lots of lessons in the Unix community that are not being passed on to you. I can't do it all. I don't even know them all right? But please, learn the lesson about binary config files are wrong and evil. Okay? I blame Mailman does not understand this. Okay? Learn the lesson that GUI command lines are not always available. All right? Do not force me to use a cookie system. I won't. All right? There's a billion other messages. If you want to know about where I think things are going, there's another talk tomorrow. But what I really want you to do is either be so pissed at me now that you lynch me, or walk out of the room and go, how many things are there to my error messages? Is it 4? Is it 5? Is it really that much work to make my error messages a little better? To maybe spend at least an afternoon writing an outline of a man documentation, so that next time I use a piece of your software, I go, wow, this person's cool. Not, oh yeah, this person barely hacked something together that doesn't work and I'm going to give up and go look for another version of it. I want you to learn to cooperate with each other. The split in the BSDs is annoying, all right? What's our number one problem security-wise right now? It is buffer overflows, okay? How many versions of FTP daemon are out there? How many do I need to have to get one that's secure? 1. Okay, it might be okay to have 5 because competition's useful, but 15 or 20 and a new one every week because, well, I do it my way. Learn to cooperate. Competition's good, but also learn to cooperate. Because I think that cooperation, if we learn to do it, if we learn to learn from the people who came before us, and often the people younger than us who've been places we haven't, we can build a fantastic community, which we're not doing at the moment. And is a dream I wish to see us all achieve someday. Thank you very much. I don't know where the stage manager is, so that until he comes, I'll take missiles, flames. I've got my lead undies on, but I got to get this horde thing off me. We'll start to the left, and we'll start sweeping that way.
You mentioned there's a good document with new standards. Where can we find your documents about standards for error handling and standards of testing?
Believe it or not, okay. I wrote one on how to write an error message. It's gone. I don't know where it went. I have to write that again. I've never written anything about error testing. There is documentation in the literature out there. ACM and IEEE have both published many papers that are good along these lines. There's also a set of references in the extreme programming books that talk about how to write unit tests and regression tests. I highly recommend understanding the difference between them.
What do you think of this for an error message? I saw this in Perl a few weeks ago. I was trying to open a file. The file's name was in a variable that I obtained from somewhere. And when it failed to open the file, the message was, file not found. Maybe you didn't want to end it with a new line.
The file not found part is bad. It needs to be, specified. This comes from the brain dead OS. The new line thing is part of what I was saying. Try to suggest what's wrong. It should have been worded, maybe you want to add a new line to the end of this file. See the difference there? Unfortunately, this is a topic that my lords in Washington do allow this particular citizen slave of the USA to talk about in private. There's another talk that needs to be in here. Thank you very much. Corner me in the hallway if you want to flame me.